Impression the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, God, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Welcome everybody to this week's episode of Treaty Talk, and it's the original crew back together for one more time, I suppose, Matt. As as like any good team, we have an injury at the moment. Mr. Neville has been out for a week or so, and we hope to have him back next week, flying fit. But for now, it's back to the old guard. I've been drafted in as a late replacement, and hopefully the back will hold up and the throat. But Matt, there's only one place to start, I suppose. You can give us your comments on Mr. Neville when we're finished this. But to quote our friend in the intro there, did Cork turn up at Páirc Uí Chaoimh last week for 50 pence trying to get a pound's worth of goods?
You could describe it as that. But look, the simple fact of the matter is Raf, that last Sunday in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Cork were overpowered in a manner in which they were overpowered in the All-Ireland final. And it was a big statement by Donald Cusick on the Sunday game to admit to that, to say that, last Sunday's defeat was every bit as bad as the All-Ireland final was. Basically, what we saw Limerick back to their very best. And in many ways, the performance last Sunday mirrored that very, very, very special performance in the All-Ireland final. Now, some of it is, of course, that Cork haven't learned from the failings. They haven't learned from the failings. They were cruelly exposed on the biggest stage of all in the All-Ireland final. And they haven't learned from the failings that were exposed by Waterford in the recent league final. And you put that on one side of the equation, and on the other side of the equation, you put a Limerick that was in fine form, going full throttle, and that's the type of result you get. But again, I suppose if we're all to learn something from it, it is that the league, even though it runs into the championship now, very often, more often than not, is very, very little guide, and in some cases no guide to championship for them. And while Waterford and Cork were involved in league semi-finals and league final, John Kiley had gone away and planned his championship and timed to perfection, getting his charges right at just the right time, and that's what happened last Sunday.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, with regards to those league campaigns, and I know it's been mentioned a lot about training loads and what kind of loads players are doing and the timings of that sort of stuff. And, I'm led to believe that Limerick's load was quite heavy. They were doing a lot of heavy training throughout the league campaign with a view to being right for this, and that they had got quite a good chunk of time off. And I suppose, look, we have to just trust in the backroom staff that are there, that they're making those decisions. They know a hell of a lot more about it than we'll ever know. I guess for Limerick, go back a few years, the league would have been a more important competition when this team was, I suppose, still evolving and still trying to get minutes and game time and stuff like that. But I don't think it has anything to prove in that regard now. So the league probably has reverted back to being just really a preparation for championship. And I suppose we did see the evidence of that last week, that when the pressure came on and when they needed to give answers, that they certainly had them all lined up.
Yeah, absolutely, and we have seen that it's John Kiley and Paul Kinnock's modus operandi for the last number of years, irrespective of what happens in the league. That there's one day that matters most for them, and that is getting the championship off to a proper start and off to a winning start. And like you're right there in your analysis of the importance and where the league fits into the scale of things, in that when Limerick were building a team and building this team, like the league had greater importance, because you wanted to see your players in the white heat of what is next to championship. And but at this stage now, that there is only one prize that matters, and that is the All-Ireland Series and the All-Ireland Championship, and bringing home the Liam McCarthy Cup. Like league winners will not be forgotten, but they'll be scarcely remembered. And when one looks back on the season, the barometer of success or failure, the real barometer of success or failure, is how you performed in the championship. Now, the league, for an evolving team and for a developing team, is good and very good. And what is very, very good, and it will apply to Waterford on Saturday evening, is that it's an avenue, and it's a way of getting that hands on silverware. And with getting your hands on silverware comes a certain level of that additional confidence, that vital ingredients of confidence, and the belief that you can get over the line. Because whatever the head of the game against Limerick, would be excused for scratching their heads and every part of them to wonder how they can close the gap on Limerick. Because there was a school of thought in going into the 20 All-Ireland final that Waterford were capable of beating Limerick. There was a school of thought going into last year's semi-final that Waterford had closed the gap and that they had come. They were as far away last year as they were the previous year. So I from that point of view, I think that the league is going to instill that little bit of extra confidence and that little bit of extra belief that, and of course, Waterford also have the confidence boost of Ballygunner winning the All-Ireland Series, getting over the line after trying and trying and trying. So, just to contextualise the importance of the league, I think for Limerick, it was of much less importance than it was to both Cork and Waterford.
Yeah,
because you must remember, Cork were seemingly in a team in transition, but Cork have been in transition now nearly 2 decades. They haven't won an All-Ireland since 2005. And on the evidence of last Sunday, you would have to say that they don't appear to be any nearer to ending that run. But of course, Cork are Cork.
I know I saw an RTE podcast there yesterday where they were saying with all the clubs they have in Cork, 200 and something odd clubs, I think, Matt, that surely they would have been able to find a 3 and a 6 that could, when you consider the fullbacks and centre backs that they've had there, that would offer a defensive spine that they certainly didn't seem to have the last day.
Yeah, and you're right there. Like they even though they had a good league campaign, a decent league campaign in getting to the final, like they didn't resolve the full back issue anyway. And if you look back on the games that they played, the 5 league games that they played, semi-final and final, they had 7 games to resolve it. But they used a number of full backs during that stage. Darragh O'Leary was there, who's a young player. Robert Downey was there. And as I said, Damien Cahalan, Robert Downey, Darragh O'Leary. And I honestly think they're no nearer to resolving the problem. They thought they had the problem resolved last year when Robert Downey bedded back in at fullback and seemed to be doing very, very well. Now, centre-back, in my opinion, they have one of the finest hurlers in the country, but he's not a centre-back. He's a wing back, and they're robbing Peter, and it's scarcely paying Paul. That's what's happening there. I cannot understand that if Cork were prepared to give a prolonged introduction and a prolonged and persist with Kieran Joyce, who seems to be a more natural centre back during. Why didn't they give him a trial there during the league campaign? He was the successful centre-back in last year's under-20 All-Ireland team, and very, very, very successful, fine hurler. And like they've gone in the past with Tim O'Mahony and didn't let him there, moved him to the wing. So, yeah, Cork have issues, Cork have problems, Cork have big decisions to make. They have big decisions to make about the leaders within the team.
Yeah, and I think from doing the podcast there with Mark Landers and the Dalo podcast with the Examiner, that there's a feeling that Cork, regardless of being out hurled or out muscled by Limerick, but that mentally they looked weak and that they kind of did give up the ghost. You know, I think, having gotten off to such a good start, it was almost like Limerick just kind of sat back and said, yeah, a goal and a point within the first few minutes. Let's just relax and settle into our rhythm and let it take its course. You know, it did give Cork a kind of, I suppose, that false dawn or that false sense of hope in the opening kind of few minutes that they might be on a winner here. But Limerick just kind of, they didn't look fussed at any stage of it. You know, I think there was gears there if they needed it, if Limerick needed, because like you have to remember too, like Limerick weren't exactly clinical in that first half. I think was it Tom Morrissey had an off day for the opening kind of 20-30 minutes. Now, in fairness to the guy, a super player, kept plugging away and still ended up on the score sheet. I think was it 3 points or 2 points he got. You know, so like one of our kind of top guys on an off day was still contributing to the team, whereas across the board with Cork, I just thought that there was incidences there in the second half of guys not chasing, of guys giving up the ghost, and you contrast that with that example of Will O'Donoghue chasing down the sideline in the second half, and I don't know which Cork player it was, but the pressure of knowing Will O'Donoghue was coming after you forced an overcooked hand pass that was then cleaned up by Limerick and went down the other end for a score. So you contrast those two things. I think Limerick's mentality, and I think we can spend an awful lot of time trying to dissect Cork, whereas flip it on its head and just say, look, regardless of how good, bad or indifferent Cork were, this is a Limerick team that came in that had people questioning them, and that's the response they gave. And I just thought, you know, if you were like, if you looked at those Cork restarts, the goalie to the cornerback back to the goalie, Limerick almost kind of like standing off from, like saying, look, you guys need to score. We're happy enough to take our chances with the long ball. And as soon as that long ball came down, I thought Barry Nash was exceptional. Dermot Burns, Declan Hannon, the amount of ball that they either caught or batted down, or a Limerick man was forced in to claim it, and it was gone again. And the thing of that is that as soon as that ball was batted down, broken and collected, that Limerick ball, that Limerick man in possession probably had 2, if not 3 options to lay a pass off. He had a short hand pass left or right, and he had a long ball with somebody making a diagonal run. You contrast that with Cork, with what Cork had to play with the movement of their forward line, their inside forward line, and there's a stark contrast.
There is absolutely. I think you've pretty well summed it up there, and you know, like I find it. Look, I think any team. And like you could overpass where Cork failed, and but you know that would be doing a disservice to Limerick, because I honestly believe that, you know, you could say Limerick trampled on them on Sunday once they got going. Like Cork, an ideal situation, home in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, the confidence of a good run in the league, despite what happened in the final. Here was a chance to put that right. And above all, you had the motivation of last year's All-Ireland final that said, by God, they gave us a lesson in Croke Park and they're not going to do it again. You add in again a goal and a point, as you said, a goal within 16 seconds. And a well-taken goal it was, because it has to be a well-taken goal to get past that Limerick defence and beat Nicky Quaid. So, and...
in fairness, Donald Logue said that was the perfect height for Nicky Quaid to save it at that second half shot, which I thought was Jesus. A ridiculous comment to make. There's no such thing as a perfect height for that kind of save. I mean,
no such thing as a perfect height. There's no such thing as a perfect height. There were 2 fantastic saves by Nicky at each side of half time. But if you put all that together, Raf, and you add up that at the end of the game, there was 11 points between the sides, and factor into it that Limerick had 17 wides.
Yeah.
Factor into it that I thought that Niall O'Leary and Sean O'Donoghue, 2 of the Cork fullback line on the day, were absolutely heroic.
Yeah.
And, that gives you a sense, and that gives you a reason as to why the like of Donald Cusick would say like that the defeat was every bit as bad as last year's All-Ireland final.
It doesn't.
A slight difference in the margin,
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier for Cork this week. But look, we'll switch focus. We'll come back to that in a while, and we'll get through those quickly. But I suppose going back, Limerick will be looking ahead to Waterford this weekend. But let's just look back at Waterford last week, and I wasn't surprised by the fight that Tipperary put up to them, because I think sometimes people have written off Tipperary rather dismissively this season. There's no point in saying that they're back to the peak of their powers. They're not, but I think you underestimate Tip at your peril in this championship, and they showed plenty in that game against Waterford. Should have had a penalty probably with that swipe. I would question whether there was separation between the hand pass for the Waterford goal. That's a 6-point swing in a game like that. So I think Tip were a lot better than people will give them credit for, and I would I think they can still cause a few problems in this championship.
Well, I was watching the game now, and I honestly thought that Tip were unlucky not to win the game. I think they caused Waterford all sorts of problems. We had been hearing, in the narrative during the week and since the league final about the potency and the importance of the Waterford half-forward line. And they were absolutely cleaned out, two of them called ashore. If you factor in that Tipperary had 4 debutants, 3 in defence, and all 3 did very, very well. You had Conor Bowe in attack, he picked up a knock. And I think that the biggest saviour for Waterford on the day was that Jason Ford didn't reach the heights that he normally reaches, and the potency that he normally displays. Had we seen on last Sunday the Jason Ford that we saw in the first half of the Munster final last year, we'd be talking about a different result. But yeah, Colin Bonner has gone away, and he has quietly, I suppose, ambled through the league, seeing what he has available, and certainly he has come up with a team that is probably further down the road of transition and probably further down the road of development than we would have thought prior to last Sunday. We see that in defence, you James Quigley coming in at full-back, Craig Morgan coming in, who had a very, very good game at left full-back. You Dylan Quirk coming in the half-back line, who was probably one of the outstanding performers of the day. Ronan Maher, taking up a leadership role. But it is the potency of the Tipperary full-forward line going forward that will be hugely important. We know to our cost what Jake Morris can do, but I thought Mark Kehoe on the edge of the square had a great game. He not because he got 2 goals, and then you have Jason Ford. Now they introduced Dan McCormick during the game, and I thought he made a very, very important contribution. So look, you write off Tipperary at your peril, and they are in a situation now whereby they have 2 home games left against Clare and Cork, and they travel to Limerick. So they will be seeing themselves in with a right chance of making it through to the last 3. Let's say they'll be seeing themselves after the performance in Waterford with a better chance of making it through to either the Munster final or the last 3 than they did before the ball was pucked in the championship.
Yeah,
I wouldn't write him off. But having said that, Sunday is a huge, huge day for him because we simply know nothing about Clare.
Yeah.
Other than that, they contain a player with the initials TK.
Yeah, and some player he is now. All right, Matt. I suppose, look, going back to that Waterford Tip, two very controversial moments. We saw Tommy Dunn, who's going to appeal his 3-month ban, which is a very, very stiff ban. It basically wipes him out for the entire championship, which I think, they have indicated they're going to appeal it. But was it a red card for that pull across the Tipperary forward and a penalty? And did you think that was a legitimate hand pass for the Waterford goal?
Yeah, I think both of them were highly controversial. I think both of them were very, 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 very marginal. Possibly, it was probably given the benefit of the doubt, and on both occasions it fell to Waterford.
Yeah, and I suppose, look,
I thought they were very, very, very marginal,
Yeah.
and I'd say if it happens in the Gaelic grounds, if something similar happens in the Gaelic grounds on Saturday evening, I'll be up in my high horse.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. I suppose you can still give the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, you mightn't have went there to pull across a guy's head or his helmet intentionally, but you still did. Yellow card and a penalty. It doesn't, you know what I'm saying? You can still give the defender the benefit of the doubt, but say it's a foul. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be a case of no foul play on, or it doesn't have to be penalty and red card. You can still, there's a halfway house to be found there, and say, look, you misjudged it. We think you misjudged it. You mistimed it. There was no intent. But I just think
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous. Yeah, exactly. And if it was happening like you said in the Gaelic grounds on Saturday night, I'm sure we'd be up in arms, baying for a penalty. Anyway, Matt, that brings us around to this weekend. Cork have a bit of time to lick their wounds and go in and try and put something together for when they face, I think, Clare next in.
Clare next Sunday, but there's one small caveat. Kieran Kingston was making a lot of the fact now that they have to go away for their 3 games. I think Cork are nearly as happy playing in Thurles as they're in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't think that's a big deal for them at all.
Going to Waterford isn't going to be easy.
No.
And if you took a broad look at it and say, right, Cork were to lose to Waterford, give that one to Waterford, it means that they have to win their 2 games in Thurles. And as I say, everything we're saying is predicated by the fact that we simply do not know what Clare will come up with.
And it's such a testament to the round robin structure that, let's say if Waterford come up here and beat Limerick on Saturday night, that drags us back into the mess and the mire and the calculations and the permutations. The round robin structure really is, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And the way that the season is kind of, the way that I suppose there's so many questions coming into the start of it. You get a few answers week 1, you get a few more answers week 2. And then you're kind of going, Jesus, how is this going to pan out looking into the final? It really has brought hurling to the fore of the GAA kind of coverage, the chat and all that goes with it. Like it has been a revelation in terms of interest and for people like us who get to sit and talk about it.
In terms of information and what games tell us, it's drip feed personified. From week to week, and you're right. Certainly, if Limerick lose to Waterford on Saturday evening, like they're in a battle, to come out of the province.
Yeah, let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at that team, Matt. So Nicky Quaid in goal, full back line: Sean Finn, Mike Casey, Barry Nash, Diarmuid Burns, Declan Hannon, Dan Morrissey, Darragh O'Donovan, William O'Donoghue, Gerard Hegarty, Keane Lynch and Tom Morrissey, and the inside forward line of Aaron Gillan, Conor Boylan and Graham Mulcahy. Obviously the missing Kyle Hayes. I suppose, look, the thing is, if we can get through this, we have Kyle Hayes and Seamus Flanagan still to come back into this team. Subs: Barry Hennessy, Ronan Connolly, Aaron Costello, Colin Coughlin, Adam English, Richie English, Robbie Hanley, Cathal O'Neill, Oisin O'Reilly, David Reedy and Pat Ryan. So Matt, that team for me, we should mention, of course, as well last week, and he's gone under the radar. I think John Kiley was quick to dismiss that he'd already made his debut against his return against Offaly a few weeks previous. But Mike Casey, Jesus, Matt, what a return!
Well, beating Cork in Páirc Uí Chaoimh was fantastic. But for me, it was the thing that superseded everything. To see Mike Casey back in the Limerick jersey, but not just to see him back playing in the championship, Raf. But Mike Casey played last Sunday as if he had never been away.
Yeah, I think the last game he played was 2 years without a championship match.
It was an absolute seamless return to the championship team, and I'm just wondering, like we saw last we saw last week how John Kiley pulled the white rabbit out of the hat with the team that he named and the team that he lined out. I'm just wondering, is there something in the pipeline again this week?
Well, let's have a look at that team graphic again, and you can tell me where you see the rabbits coming out of the hat. Like Conor Boylan in the edge of the square, Aaron and Graham either side. Can you see what rabbits? I suppose not out of your hat, but out of your crystal ball, Matt. What?
Yeah, you would think that we've nearly ran out of rabbits now, but like Carl O'Neill had a very, very impressive performance, a cameo performance. Now, if you think back, Raf, Richie English had a fantastic league campaign. And we know about the versatility of Barry Nash. And we see his propensity to go forward with great effect. Got a couple of points last week.
Yeah.
Is there something there?
Who knows? And could you see a possible change in the inside forward line, and maybe Cathal O'Neill coming into to wing forward and Garrod Hegarty going in the edge of the square to replace the physicality that Kyle Hayes would have brought last weekend? You know,
you could see something like that, or you could see Barry Nash returning to the attack, and I think Richie English slotting in at the back, like it was a corner forward, a named corner forward that was replaced last week with a full back.
Yeah, it's a testament as well to the skill levels of this team to look at the. I mean, we're talking there about the interchangeability basically of forwards and backs, and lads who are as comfortable facing the ball as defending or as playing in the forwards. So it's like. It's a real testament to the skill levels of the players, to the coaches, to say that, and I'm sure that any of these changes that are made, they're worked on in training prior to any match or prior to any implementation. Nothing happens by accident with this team or with this coaching staff.
No, and it's like we've numerous examples of the versatility of the team. You can see originally when Mike Casey, when he got injured, saw how successful Dan Morrissey was in slotting in at full back. Now that Mike Casey is back, you can see Dan reverting to his old position, and it was as if he was never away. You see the versatility of Barry Nash, and I mentioned Barry Nash again because I think this guy is in the form of his life, and he's an absolutely critical performer on this Limerick team. And just looking at the Munster club games, the Munster Senior Cup games in which he was handed the captaincy. He was handed the captaincy for a reason, because I think Barry Nash is a leader, and I think he's having an absolutely fantastic season. But Raf, no discussion on Limerick and Cork last Sunday would be complete without reference to Cian Lynch. And he raided the bag of tricks again for that special point. And I don't want to detract from the point for 1 minute, but I honestly thought that his point immediately before half-time was one for the ages. He was right out on the sideline. He was playing into the wind.
On the north stand, just in front of the north stand. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And he looked up and split the post.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Only a special player could do it.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, Cian Lynch was not at his best last Sunday.
No, probably not. Came in and out of the game, but yeah.
But still made a huge contribution.
Absolutely. Matt, looking at that team, we don't have a Waterford team as of yet, but how do you see Saturday breaking down? How do you see it going?
I see Limerick winning it, but it will be much closer than the last 2 years, because Waterford will have that little bit of momentum. They'll have that extra bit of belief having won the league. They'll have that extra bit of belief with the Ballygunner players having won the All-Ireland. I think it's going to be much, much closer. Very, very important, and how Limerick will keep the shackles on Hutchinson, Bennett and Kiley. I thought for the most part Tipperary did a decent job on them. And as I said already, as I referenced already, two of that Tipperary full back line were making their championship debuts. So, like, you would have to have every confidence that if it's Sean Finn, which it will, Mike Casey, and if Barry Nash is back there, I'd be quite confident that they can do the business. Now, Waterford started last week, and they left Jamie Barron and Austin Gleeson and Derek Daly on the bench. Now, by half time, Liam Cahill had to bring him on, and they definitely made an impact. So we're definitely going to see changes in the Waterford team now. How many I do not know, and where they're going to slot in. Now, the two lines were decent for Waterford at midfield, but Callum Lyons was back in the half back line with Derek Daly moved to mid, not Derek, Corlett Daly, Derek Daly's brother at midfield. He may be one of the ones that will lose out. Where they will place Austin Gleeson, it's a continuous enigma from year to year. Possibly a right half forward at the expense of Neil Montgomery. And Derek Daly may have to settle for a place on the bench now. We're only crystal ball gazing, but you must also remember that Jamie Barron hasn't had a great record in terms of effectiveness against Limerick. And that is down in no small part to William O'Donoghue. And of course, look, mentioned the same William O'Donoghue. I thought he was immense again last Sunday. And, you know, he they're around midfield. Midfield has, through Dara Fitzgibbon, has, you know, through the league campaign in particular, provided the spark for Cork to get that good league run. And that was very firmly blocked off last Sunday. So it'll be interesting, but whatever lineup that Waterford come up with, I think they will push Limerick, but I don't think they'll beat them. And I think that John Kiley and Paul Kinner will be just as happy that Limerick would be pushed. Because, like, in fairness, what we saw in Cork last Sunday, you know, mismatches aren't much good to anybody, because that's what it looked for the most part. Like, we talk about all the advantages that Cork got. You add in Limerick's shortcomings of 17 wides, you know, it all adds up to a mismatch, Raf.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, it is a contrasting Limerick Waterford. I suppose it's similar enough styles, really, the two teams. You know, there are kind of nuances and differences, but they're, you know, I suppose of the teams out there, Waterford are probably the ones that play most like Limerick, or are set out with that sort of high intensity tackling, pressing game.
Yeah, but don't have the same physicality.
Probably not. No, not across the 15 anyway. In certain positions, yes, but not across the 15.
And don't have the same intensity. Like, take Graham Mulcahy last Sunday. Graham got no score, but like, the amount of work that he put in was simply phenomenal.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. He may not have been on the scoreboard, but he more than made his contribution to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, we'll move on because we're closing in on time and we do have other stuff to get through. Quickly, Matt, the 20s beating Cork. Questions, I suppose, after that escape from jail against Clare, where they really, really got out of jail. I think scoring 3-6 in a championship match. Was it 3-6? I think it was 3-6, wasn't it?
It was a lowly score anyway.
But got out against Clare. Question marks going into this Cork game. Cork had already beaten Clare, of course, but questions answered, Matt, and quite a performance from the 20s below in Páirc Uí Rinn.
Yeah, I suppose the one thing that two things that struck me about it, and two important things I believe is the vast improvement, how much Dermot Mullins learned from the game against Clare. And the corrective action that he took, and the way he set out his team and what have you, I think that was absolutely massive. And secondly, I think the way the team adapted without that talisman, Cathal O'Neill. Because people were inclined to throw their hands in the air and say, oh, sure, look, that's the under-20 gone now with Cathal gone.
No, Jack Neville did tell me you had a rant lined up for this, for the Cathal O'Neill situation with him being gone from the 20s. So I'd like to give you your space for that rant, and if you'd like to comment.
Of course, it's one of these things, Jack, that annoys me no end, and I just don't know. I just don't know how an asinine rule, and that's all I can describe it as, asinine rule like that can get through. Where did it get through, and who left it get through? Because it has no logic whatsoever. Like we're talking about players, you know, and the importance of players. And John Kiley has been at pains about over the years, and he's the most successful manager in the game at present. The importance of the game, players playing with their colleges and playing with their own age level.
Yeah, he's always had, like, I think going back from the minute he came into the role, he always paid full respect to the Fitzgibbon competitions, to any competitions that fellas were involved with outside of the county. And I think one of the things in his post-match interview the last day was, you know, he said that their S&C guys will monitor the likes of Cathal O'Neill's load. So if he's playing with the 20s, it'll replace a training session with Limerick, and it'll slot back in. He'll get his recovery. Those guys they know enough to manage that. It's not, I don't think it's a burnout issue. To me, it seems crazy. Like, and like, it's like I said, those guys, the S&C guys, John Kiley and the backroom staffs of not just Limerick, I'd imagine of all the other counties would probably be in the same boat with these lads, and that they will give them the time.
Cork took a preemptive strike in that they didn't include Kieran Joyce at all, who's eligible now. Darragh O'Leary, I don't know what they would have done with him but he's injured. You know, what worries me about it is, are we going to have more of this nonsense coming down the track? Isn't it time that people woke up, you know?
Or at least ask the players what they wanted. You know, I'm sure.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about county boards, and I'm making a general point here. And I'm not so much county boards as the constituent of county boards, clubs. Like, decision making has been eroded by stealth from the clubs over the last number of years. And like, we can't have on one side be talking about the primacy of the club and the association and giving them no say. Like, this thing is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if we want to do, if we want to change rules, and if we want to do this, that, and the next thing, we have a committee appointed in Croke Park, who usually come with the caveat that they're a high-powered committee. So in other words, what these come up with is gospel. Yeah. That wasn't the basis on which the GA was founded at all. GA was founded on the principle of subsidiarity and democracy, where the decision making came from the ground up, from the club.
Yeah.
And the clubs have got to wake up. It's not too long ago since every officer in the county board was elected. Now 3 of them are appointed: county secretary, county children's officer, county development officer. What position is going to be appointed next? The decision making. The ordinary fellow in the club, the ordinary delegate in the club, do you think that they would make this kind of a rule? And it is not a burnout issue. And you know, in many ways, it is a reflection. The rule is a reflection on the men of the highest integrity that take up positions of management of county teams. just imagine for 1 minute either John Kiley or Dermot Mullins abusing Cathal O'Neill by having him out morning, noon and night.
No, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
No.
This thing, like, you look at David Clifford, scarcely played under 20 for his county.
Yeah.
One of the finest footballers in the country.
Yeah. The minor hurlers, Matt, they face into a semi-final against Waterford next weekend.
They do on Tuesday night in Kilmallock at 6:30. We know very little about Waterford, other than that they suffered 2 defeats. Now I saw Limerick in the minor game against Cork. I was watching it. I was disappointed with them. I thought we saw a different animal last Tuesday night against Kerry, albeit now you can dismiss it that it was Kerry, but I thought I saw a lot of good things about the Limerick minor team. I'd be pretty confident facing Waterford. Now Waterford gave a very, very close run to Tipperary in the first round in Dungarvan. They were very heavily beaten last week by Clare. Raf. Was
Sorry,
it?
It's actually
1-8 or something.
It's actually a quarter-final match, not a semi-final.
So
Cork are through to the semi-final in that, and I think
that's right. So if you've Kerry and Clare in the other quarter-final. Now, how the semi-final lineup will be if Limerick and Clare win, I suspect that Limerick will be playing Tipperary.
Yeah, it'll switch over. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and it should be that, like, Clare will beat Kerry, and I'd imagine Limerick should have enough to beat Waterford based on what we've seen so far. Matt, it would be remiss of us not to mention the minor footballers. Got out a huge start out in McNeville last night, playing into that breeze, and it seemed like the breeze hindered them in the second half because they had to do everything in their power to hold on. A good win gets them back into contention, but there's some serious permutations going into the last weekend. I suppose Limerick will be playing a Waterford side who have really leaked and conceded huge scores to date, and I think Tipperary and Clare out in Shannon is what we'll have our eyes on most, as well as we see how that affects Limerick's position with getting into the Phase 1 final. I think if Clare are defeated, any Tipperary victory means any victory for Limerick over Waterford will do. If Clare beat Tipperary, it will go down to the points differential, which is, there's some crazy swings out there. I think Clare are plus 27 at the moment, Limerick are minus whatever, but obviously Clare had played Waterford, so it's going to be an evening for the calculators next week.
It is. It's quite simple. Raf, wins for Clare and Limerick are unfortunately out unless they beat Waterford by something like 28-30 points. Now, the one thing I would say about that is that after 2 games, Waterford are on minus 46. So they have been shipping big scores as recently as last night in Leamy Bryan. They suffered a heavy defeat to Tipperary. Prior to that, they were suffered a very heavy defeat to Clare in Shannon. Look, the one permutation that ensures that Limerick progress to the Phase 1 final is they better the Clare result. They have to better the Clare result. That's what it comes down to. If Clare draw, Limerick have to win. If Clare lose, Limerick have to at least draw. Now, you would really, really fancy Limerick on the performance that you saw last night. I certainly, for one, and I put my hands up on this, Raf, I didn't see the performance coming against Clare. Particularly, I saw the game against Tipperary. And whilst there were some encouraging aspects of it, at the end of the day, Limerick lost. They lost by 7 points, and turning it against Clare, who, let's face it, who've been quite good at minor level in the last couple of years. Now, I think we beat them for the first time in 7 years and 7 meetings, or was it 8 meetings last year in the championship in Ennis, and quite honestly, based on the first round results, I didn't think that Limerick would do it. But there was an awful lot to like about the Limerick team. The way they took the game to Clare in the first half, and the most important thing of all was that they made it count on the scoreboard. Because we've seen Limerick teams dominating early on in various codes and competitions, and maybe coming out of it maybe 1 or 2 points ahead. But certainly they built up a decent lead. But having said that, Clare turned over with the wind, and Clare dominated the second half. There's no use in saying otherwise. But like the defence of Limerick was absolutely fantastic. The way they closed out that game, it was just simply magnificent.
Yeah, it was a super team performance, and it was a kind of a galvanizing effort, in fairness, because they had to carry hard yards into that breeze without even scoring, but just almost like just eating up the clock at stages, just being dogged, getting a hand in. They survived a few high balls bouncing in front of the goalkeeper that could have gone anyway, in that half as well. So it was.
But having said that, at the other end, whilst they defended stoutly, they were unlucky for a few scores in the second half.
Yeah, there was a penalty incident there, Matt, that I've seen given in favor of the attacker on plenty of occasions. Yeah. It looked like a push in the back to me. No,
look, but there were a few, maybe 1 or 2, maybe wrong decision makings, wrong decisions made at crucial times. But look, overall, Raf, it was fantastic, especially after the under-20s losing on Monday night. But it means now that in the 4 underage competitions, all our teams have won a game.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's not too long ago since we were talking about Limerick teams not winning a game at under 20, under 21 back then, or minor levels. That has all changed. The under 21 footballers beat Waterford. The minor hurlers have now beaten Kerry. The under 20 hurlers have won both of their games, and the minor footballers have beaten Clare. And you play 5 games in 5 days, and you win 4 of them. Let's hope that's a road that never ends.
Matt, quickly, we have to. I'm aware of the time closing in this, but there is action in Camogie this weekend.
Yeah, I'll run through a kind of a what's going on elsewhere. Now, the Limerick Camogie are involved in 4 Munster Championship games over 2 days at the weekend. It actually starts off at 2:00 in Fedhamore on Saturday, when Limerick play Tipperary in the Munster Minor Championship. And Limerick are after coming off a very, very creditable performance in Innis last week when they went down by 2 points unluckily to Clare. So they will be hoping now. Tipperary have been pretty good at minor in recent years, so it will be a difficult task, but it will be very, very interesting. Tipperary beat them already this year on a day of very, very strong wind, and built up a huge lead. So that will be an interesting game. But of course, later that day at the Gaelic Grounds at 5:00, Limerick take on Tipperary in the Munster Senior Camogie Championship quarter-final. The winners will play Clare. Now, this is an opportunity for John Lillis to try and get a formula together, try and get a composition of his team together for the forthcoming championship. Now, and I was looking at the forthcoming championship, and no disrespect to the teams that we have been drawn with, but of course, we've got the tough end of the stick again, like we got in the league. We had to play Kilkenny and Cork away, mind you, before we got a home game against Clare, which we damn near won. And had we won, we wouldn't have been talking about being relegated. But, perish the thought. Our first 2 games in the championship are Galway and Kilkenny. Galway away and Kilkenny. And then we have Down, Antrim and Offaly. So not a bad group in normal circumstances. There are winnable games in there, and John Dillis certainly will have an eye on that. And you know, it's been a disappointing campaign in terms of results so far. And like Limerick have played 4 games in the league, they haven't won any, and that's why they will be playing Division 2 next year. But you know, playing Division 2 next year, Raf, isn't the end of the world. Wexford are only up this year after a sojourn in Division 2. Waterford are in Division 2. So what, you might say? You know, let's use Division 2 as a springboard. So let's hope for a good result. Let's hope for a good result, first of all, and if not, get a result on Saturday night, we get a good performance. Now we move on to Sunday then, and there's 2 games, both at 2 o'clock and both in South Limerick. Limerick, interestingly, are playing 4 games this weekend, and they're all at home. Limerick are playing Cork in Paddy Carroll Park, Ballygran, in the Under-16A Championship at 2 o'clock. And at the same time in Effin, Limerick are playing Waterford in the Munster Junior Championship. Now, it's a complete new-look Limerick team this year. I was just looking at the panel there of that played Wexford in the first round of the league and subsequently played Clare. There's a single player that was involved last year and involved in the squad at the moment. So it'll be very interesting to see what squad Tim McGrath will come up with on Sunday for that game in Effin. Also at the weekend, and I don't know at this point where the venue is, but Limerick took part last weekend in the All-Ireland LGFA Under-14 Goal Series. Now, they travelled to Abbottstown last weekend. They narrowly lost to Monaghan, 3-4 to 3-3. Controversially lost to Monaghan because everybody in the ground except the referee thought the game was a draw. But it wasn't. They lost the second game before beating Sligo in the final game, 1-5 to 3 points, which was enough to see them through to the quarter-final. So they're involved in the quarter-final action this weekend when they take on Cavan. So best of luck to John McNamara and his management team and the girls, and hope like that they will make it through to the last 4. Now, we also have the third and final round of the Celtic Challenge hurling competition. In the opening rounds, Limerick have 2 teams in it. We'll take Limerick Sarsfields first, who are drawn from the City and West. And in the first round, they lost narrowly to Clare. Now, that would be a full County Clare side. And it included a son of Sean McMahon's, the great of the past from Clare. And last week, they bounced back and they drew with Galway in the second round. Now, Limerick Treaty, which are drawn from the south and east, lost narrowly to Waterford in the first round and bounced back to beat Kilkenny Blacks to draw with Kilkenny Blacks. Both teams drew last weekend. Both teams lost the first weekend. Both teams drew last weekend, and let's hope both teams win this weekend, because both teams are away this weekend. This Saturday, Sarsfields are away to Cork North, and Treaty are away to Cork East.
Perfect, Matt. I think that just about wraps it up for this weekend. Thanks for everybody for watching, and we'll be back next week with analysis of Limerick Waterford and all the action from the weekend. Before we go,
Raf, we will send our good wishes to Jack.
We will, absolutely.
Jack picked up an injury, and I was speaking with him yesterday at Lent, and he seems to be in good form, seems to have turned the corner, and he's vowing to be back to analyse Limerick and Waterford.
Yeah, and look, if we have to, we might do the next podcast out in Ballysteen if we have to travel, Matt. So, bear that in mind as well.
Yeah, but there are gremlins out in Ballysteen, as we have seen in the past.
Once we get our gremlin from Ballysteen back, we'll be fine. Matt, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Raf.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Sheahy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
went out there from the workout today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the packagement and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.